Well, it finally happened.
Stab.
Episode 6 is finally out, and it was just as much of a banger as I imagined. Hello there. Welcome back. It's been a while. Did you enjoy the episode as much as
Lord Drone.
What is it?
What's that sound from downstairs?
Oh, there are still some people at the episode 6 watch party. Don't mind them. I'm sure they'll stop partying anytime soon. Probably. Want me to put my jazzy playlist instead?
Wait, no.
Hang on.
Don't.
Damn it. Heck, how do I turn this thing on? Much better. So, as I was saying, I think episode 6 is the best episode of Murder Drone so far. Not only it was emotionally charged, but there were lore dumps left and right. Some scenes in the episode confirm previous theories of this channel, while some others debunk certain guesses or hypotheses. And on top of that, there are many revelations about the past of the Murder Drone's timeline. All of these keep the questions going. Can't wait for episode 7 to come out already. So, as usual, let's break down everything from episode 6, this time into a total of 5 sections. These 5 sections will cover the most important beats from this episode, including every scene where Liam Vickers shows us his finger fetish. Seriously, has anyone noticed how many finger scenes there are in this episode? It's kinda creepy if I'm honest. Alright, are you ready? I think we are good to go, though, I've got to say, just as a heads up, I love the smell of being, partially, right in the morning. Let's not jump right into the more complex stuff, and dive instead into something a little simpler, a head warmer, if you may, to get things going. Let's begin by talking a little about the cabin fever labs and the Sentinel drones. At the start of the episode, in the offices of the cabin fever labs, we see this green-haired worker drone with a grey dress trying to hide from sentinels.
Oh wow, that is not good for business.
Sorry, not those sentinels, these sentinels. The thing is, even though we are never told this drone's name, if we turn on the captions for the episode, or if we go to the credits, we can see that she's labeled as Subject 029. This essentially confirms what I previously theorized back in my teaser analysis, that the grey dress drones are cabin fever lab subjects, much like Yeva and Nori, who wore a grey dress in Khan's photographs in episode 4, or Alice throughout the entirety of episode 6, or even this drone corpse under the floor of this cabin in episode 4. By the way, have you noticed there is a drawing of the Sentinel drones in here too? Just telling you in case the internet hasn't already. It is in this facility where the test subjects were tinkered with, imbuing them with absolute solver strings in their core programming. These test subjects would remain in the office, doing simple tasks in old computers as the JC Jenson scientists studied their behavior through the cameras in the building. Oh, now that I'm talking about my teaser analysis, I suppose this is a good a time to do some housekeeping. Yes, I'm aware I was wrong in my previous video. The baby cry and the laugh are not from Uzi and Nori, but from Bo and Alice, as we can hear in the episode. And aside from that, this symbol doesn't mean that the connection between the test subjects and the absolute solver failed, but rather that they are stuck in a boot loop. My bad. It was an innocent guess. As always, there's not much to go to with teasers like this. Anyway, let's talk about Yoshis now. Sentinel drones, as established in episode 6, are anti-drone dingo robots built by JC Jenson themselves. Now, why are there sentinels in the cabin fever labs to begin with? It's quite simple really. These sentinels were initially built to get rid of any test subjects with possible malfunctions. However, it seems that these sentinels now attack all drones in their vicinity, regardless of whether they are malfunctioning or not. As you can see, their visor says to eliminate AI targets. They not only attack test subjects of the cabin fever labs, but they are also hostile towards N and V, even if they don't present any unusual behavior. It seems to me that the Sentinel's main directive was changed at one point by the JC Jenson scientists working in the cabin fever labs. They changed their objective from killing a few drones to killing all of them, all in order to ensure there were no test subjects left in the building. Now, I wonder what catastrophic event might have caused JC Jenson to have this change of mind and kill every test drone in their scientific program. As always, things come at a time. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Wait, Lord Drone. You say that the Sentinels have the directive to eliminate AI targets, but didn't one of them bite Tessa's arm?
Well, yes, of course. That is just an honest mistake by this dastardly Dino dude. Once this Sentinel drone realizes the error of his ways, he has an aneurysm, and then straight up fucking dies. These Raptors have a more central role in the latter half of the episode. When all the Sentinel drones start closing in on Tessa and the gang, we see a Sentinel drone with red eyes target the entire cast, with the rest of the Sentinel drones following soon after. Now, since we see this one Sentinel drone change the color of his eyes before that, and since this is Doll's trap after all, one might assume that it was Doll who took control of this Robodino. However, if you pay close attention, you might just realize that this Sentinel drone is the same one that bit Tessa's arm, as we can still see her blood on his mouth. So yeah, he was not dead after all. The fact that his eyes are red doesn't exclusively mean that Doll controlled this Sentinel drone, but more so that he has a main error in his directive, as we can see in his visor. In this one scene, this corrupted Sentinel orders the rest of his kind to attack at will, and that isn't necessarily Doll's doing. Alright, the easy part of this video is out of the way now. For this next section, before we start, allow me to play some clips for you.
Why involve Doll? What's happening to her?
She reckons the humans did something to her folks down here. Gave them a sickness she inherited. We know it mutates and damaged AI. It took Sin as a host, then it took everything. The humans who saw what was happening at home thought they could understand it. All they did was spread it. I'm here to find which drones were infected. I'll need you to choose the universe over one little drone and...
What?
Before she's not herself anymore.
So good! 2717!
So, if you've been on my channel for a while, you know what this means. I was right about the nature of solver powers. I was almost completely right. If you watched my very first video, you might remember what I discussed about solver powered drones like Uzi and Doll. If not, I'm afraid you'll have to watch the entire 22-minute video all by yourself. Fine, I guess I can do you a favor. In a nutshell, my general understanding is that solver powered drones were created in the cabin fever labs by imbuing the test subjects with absolute solver strings in their programming. These solver powers are passed down to their offspring, allowing them to tap into the absolute solver and use the same reality bending powers as the real thing. However, the link between these worker drones and the absolute solver also functions the other way around. The solver powered drones not only start seeing hallucinations of the absolute solver, but the more they use their powers, the more exposed they are to being controlled by the absolute solver through their shared code. The solver powered drones constantly try to reject the calls from the absolute solver in an attempt to avoid possession. This constant rejection causes these drones to overheat, and the only way they can refrigerate, by virtue of JC Jenson's design philosophy, is to drink oil. The drones that falter to the absolute solver turn into solver drones, and at the time, I believe this meant that the drones were fully possessed, unless, you know, they get yeeted into the stratosphere. Most of those fundamentals about solver-powered drones stand true now, thanks to the evidence of this very episode. However, we now know that true possession is reached the moment the drones themselves display yellow eyes at all times, aside from sporting the absolute solver's characteristic voice.
Oh, don't mind me.
Oh god! What the fuck? What the fuck, okay? Not okay!
Giggle. I am so naughty.
But Lord Drone, If true possession means yellow eyes, how come N, V, and J have yellow eyes and be fine? They were white before in the flashbacks, so how is it they're yellow now? What's up with that?
Oh boy, do I have news for you. Please save this question for a little later. The answer might actually surprise you. So, full possession of a drone means that the absolute solver is now capable of distorting reality with a higher power, evidenced by the black holes Yuzi creates throughout episode 6. And much like I predicted, since the absolute solver symbol is quite small in this scene, this seems to suggest that the absolute solver abilities are more destructive the stronger the bodies, with a higher amount of possessed drones amplifying the potential for destruction.
Lucy, no!
During episode 6, we see Yuzi lose control to the absolute solve multiple times. N is exposition dumped by Tessa on the risks on letting her unloose, while V witnesses firsthand just how devastating these powers can be. That is why, towards the end of the episode, we get this scene, where even though they talk nothing about it, they both comprehend how dangerous it would be to let her turn completely.
No!
Heck, it's now clearer than ever, as I previously predicted, that this is the entire reason they were sent to Copper 9 in the first place, to disassemble any remaining solver-powered drones, in order to stop the program/AI mutation known as Absolute Solver from spreading any further to other exoplanets.
Better to stay distant though, don't you think? Since I'll have to kill you next.
Worker drones are corrupted, and that's why the company sent us.
Her last known act was sicking you lot on the human exoplanets.
Why? That's what we're trying to figure out, bozo.
I mean, considering that the map you yourself showed and contains the title Corruption Influence, I think it's pretty self-explanatory why Cyn would send a recon team to exterminate solver-powered drones. But again, more on that later. By the end of episode 6, we see that Yuzi has already partially turned. Look at this scene in the elevator. Even though the lighting is a bit tricky, notice how Yuzi's right eye is colored yellow, while the other remains purple. By the way, the right eye has consistently been the eye that turns into the solver symbol whenever solver-powered drones use their powers. But here's the kicker, I think there's another drone in the show that has already partially turned as well. Another drone that has had her mother go to the cabin fever labs, and that has been concealing her right eye this entire time.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm talking about goofy ass bouncy girl. There's a pretty high chance Doll is also getting corrupted as well. This could explain why we see her eyes reflected in the monitor of episode 4, while also seeing one of the hands of the Absolute Solver in the same cabin. The same applies to this scene, where we see a hologram of Cyn, then one of the hands of the Absolute Solver, and then we see Doll standing behind Yuzi. This is one of the moments Doll is beginning to turn, and so she starts exhibiting similar features to the Absolute Solver's physical form. Heck, this is just me guessing, but I believe that the reason she's rushing towards the bottom of the cabin fever labs is because there's a cure there that can help her get rid of her powers. She wants to get there first, in order to cure herself, before she can cure Yuzi.
Мне тебя жаль. Если я найду то, что ищу, то и тебе помогу. Извини.
Oh, don't you dare!
Great, we have covered all the details of the solver-powered drones, but surely there is one of them that is worth talking about a little more.
You're a lot like her, I'll say. Except her yellow eyes.
Well then, turns out Nori was also fully possessed by the Absolute Solver at some point. This would also explain her clear visions, seeing as the bond she had with the Absolute Solver was much higher.
She was always all, build doors against the coming sky demons. The singularity awakens. Look at this cool ass I can draw.
Now, let's pay attention to some of Alice's lines, and try to make sense of them.
Dealt with witches for too. Though, ain't seen 02 since she left us to die. Nori, right? Sure thought killing all them folks was pretty slick.
So, Nori left the people of the Cabin Fever Labs to their own demise, and in Alice's words, she imploded all folks. This one line could have many interpretations, but if you ask me, I think what happened is that the Absolute Solver took full control of Nori, then went on a rampage around the Cabin Fever Labs, and ultimately made Copper 9's core collapse before fully escaping the facilities, destroying any Sentinel drone the JC Jenson scientist threw on her way. The Absolute Solver does have a thing for core collapsing after all. That is, of course, if we take Alice's line at face value.
Okay, no. That's a stretch and a half if I've ever seen one. You can't just make this crackpot theory with only a dubious sentence as evidence. How can you possibly prove that Nori caused the collapse of Copper 9? Why are you so sure the collapse happened at this very location?
Go on then. Tell me how this huge asshole in the ground isn't indicative of a planetary level explosion. Shall I continue then? Okay, so, Nori caused the collapse of Copper 9. However, I don't think she did all of this alone. It's just a guess, but I think Yeva also followed in on her footsteps, being fully possessed by the Absolute Solver as well. These are the only two Cabin Fever Labs drones that made it out of the building alive after all, at least that we know of. And additionally, notice how Yeva seems traumatized of this post-collapse photo, as if with PTSD, while Nori seems like she has no recollection of the atrocities they've committed. After the core collapse, the rest is history. Nori would meet Khan later, and give Robo birth to Yuzi, despite Khan not knowing anything of Nori's origins.
After the core collapse, I didn't notice the collars. Only your mom being a catch.
Both Yeva and Nori's offspring inherited her mother's powers, which leads to the present time. And last but not least, because we know that there are several Disassembly drones loitering around Copper 9, it is quite likely that one of them killed Nori as part of their mission. By the way, check out this line of episode 4.
Build doors against the coming sky demons!
Would you believe me if I said this is actually the Absolute Solver talking here, so that no Disassembly drones killed her most valuable host in Copper 9? It would make a lot of sense with everything we know so far. Alright, we can now turn on to the next section.
Wait a second. Have you noticed this binary code here? Does it mean anything?
Oh, nice catch. Really, I'm proud of you. You're making steps as a theorist. Though, to answer your question,
It doesn't. I checked.
let me teach you some binary 101. In order to translate from binary, every letter or number has to be a combination of 8 zeros or 1s. For example, these two sets of numbers mean high. And yes, the first set of numbers in this picture translate into an N, but the other 3 letters don't mean anything, as they are groups of 7 numbers instead of 8, and thus they don't have any discernible translation. So, case solved there. Let's now get back to the next section, which begins with a long overdue confirmation.
Real tired of killing this one.
Effective drones were cloned more.
What's the problem? Isn't this what you predicted? J is a clone controlled by Absolute Solver.
Well, not exactly. But that's not why I'm upset. How about we take a little break from theorizing, and we discuss it a while. You might not know me personally. Heck, I'm just a guy behind an MLG voice, but my favorite media franchise of all time is Sonic the Hedgehog, which I've been following closely since I was 5. Through my time in the fandom, I'm of the opinion that Shadow the Hedgehog should have stayed dead after the ending of Sonic Adventure 2, reviving him in Sonic Heroes, and further mangling his origins in his eponymous game tainted the character and the franchise overall, which culminated in a hard reset in one of the worst video games in history. All of this, because the producers thought it would be a good idea to content the fandom and bring him back just for the shits and giggles. Now, I'm not saying this will apply to murder drones, but this justification feels very haphazard, and it is accepted very nonchalantly.
Classic Jay.
Sure, I was happy that I was partially right in my theory, but in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, this Deus Ex Machina effectively throws a wrench at the stakes of future episodes. Let's imagine that V does really die by the end of episode 6, as the episode itself appears to imply. What's stopping the showrunners from resurrecting V, under the guise of Sin having more and more backups?
I have backups.
What if Softy Boy dies? Can they resurrect him? If the fan base feels his death wasn't deserved? I'm a bit concerned story-wise because some people might call this an ass pull by the writers of the show. But perhaps I'm alone on that thought and this mini rant is just wasting your time. So, break is over. Let's get back to theory time. Regardless of the narrative implications, the fact that Jay has a complete recollection of her deaths does raise a few eyebrows. All this time, we've assumed this eldritch monster thingy to be the absolute solver, possessing Jay as their host. But does this dialogue imply that the eldritch monster was Jay the entire time? Well, let's look at episode 2 again, and check the dialogue lines that do point to the eldritch nightmare to be Jay.
And please don't. And also, I was using those.
As we can see, Eldritch J seems to address N by his name, so that's it then, right? The Eldritch monster thingy is actually J. Except, it's not that easy. We also have these other dialogue lines, which point to the Eldritch monster being the absolute solver.
So you are a program?
More like you are our cute puppets. It hurts our feelings you don't remember us.
And what's with the mom hologram?
Easier to assimilate than explain.
So, which one is it? Is the Eldritch monster J or the absolute solver? Well, here's my theory. It is actually both. Or, more so, 70-30. A quick justification is because neither J nor the absolute solver refer to themselves in plural.
You will not have to discard your pets, and I will not discard you. We're busy then anyway, so whatever. So lame. Oh, Jay's not here. We are trying to repair that host as per our directive.
But in order to explain this a bit better, how about we play a cool little game and build ourselves a disassembly drone? We need to pick one of the drones of this mansion. I suggest going with V.
Oh no!
Okay, whatever, we'll use J. G. Someone's a little sentimental today. So, we need to upgrade J from a worker drone to a disassembly drone. First, we'll need J's metallic core, which can be extracted with our disassembly units. Now, what should this assembly drone need to have in order to reckon some exoplanets and disassemble any solver-powered drones? Well, we should take notes from the solver drones we've seen so far. We'll give J some wings, claws, and plenty of firepower. Don't forget the nanite tail, of course. Do you think we should give Jay some health regeneration too? In order to do that, we will infect her with Absolute Solver. Oh, what's Absolute Solver, you may ask? Well, despite all the terror originating from planet Earth, the nature of this Absolute Solver seems to be a parasitic, hive-mind alien creature. We originally found them in worker drones with some damaged AI, but now we can apply it to any drone we want. Infecting Jay with Absolute Solver will cause her core to corrupt, but she will have the health regeneration she needs. What? Oh, that symbol? We use it as an abbreviation for core corruption. As you can see, it is the corrupted core, if we were to see it from the top. In order to infect her, we will remove one of her OS strings and replace it by the hazardous mutation created by the Absolute Solver. This will put her in a zombie-like state momentarily, evidenced by the X in her visor or the error 606 message. But after that, you have your disassembly drone J, ready for you to kill. What's that? You fear Jay will get possessed or turned into an eldritch monster like solver-powered drones? Then worry not, our boss Sin has administrator rights, which allow her to install a program that overrides full corruption. So yeah, it may seem like your drone is corrupted, but it's actually doing just fine. The only caveat is that this admin program will cause Jay to lose her core memories from the time she was a worker drone.
You passed out because some internal program is trying to delete these memories.
We still don't know how to circumvent that, but maybe some good hacker will eventually.
Tessa?
Anne! You're a mimical! Too tall, handsome, is toxic.
And if it transforms into an eldritch monster thingy? Well, perhaps you should kill it before it's too late. Like that's ever going to happen. Hi, future me speaking. This was where this section was intended to end, but I was revising my notes until I got to 2 findings you should know. So, remember how both solver-powered drones and disassembly drones can't roam around the daylight? Well, I think I've got the answer for that. Both the solver-powered drones and disassembly drones have absolute solver in their programming, which is a parasitic life form that is incredibly sensitive to solar radiation. This is why, if any of these drones were to face the sun, both the parasite and the host are damaged. Also, another thing I discovered is the full meaning of this scene. Care to try and guess what's really happening here? Well, here's my take. I believe that the 3-tentacle alien that we are seeing is actually an absolute solver hatchling. Once the parasite has enough control over the host, it starts to reproduce in this manner, and it seems to be that someone remembers the appearance of these aliens all too well. Right, that's all I had to say. Let's get back to the video.
Holy shit. Lord Drone, I'm going to be honest. My mind has been blown about 3 sections ago. I don't think I can't take much more.
Trust me, don't worry.
Thank God. I was scared you would go on another
It's about to get worse.
What?
That's right, we're in the final boss now. The only thing left to cover from this episode actually happens at the very beginning, by courtesy of Jay and Tessa. Let's hear what they say.
Sin disappeared on Earth.
Boss ran
We
away.
mutually disengaged. Her last known act was sicking you lot on the human exoplanet. Jay, relay hand, Sin's orders.
Step 1. Clear drop zone of life and construct spire. Step 2.
Enter labs with this symbol. Not too much to go off, but if Sin wants these labs, we burn them down.
So, from these conversations, we have the following. 1. That best character is still alive, even after being used as a host back on Earth, but that now is at large. 2. That she is a boss of some kind in JC Jenson. 3. That she sent out disassembly drones to different exoplanets. 4. That she wants to clear out life in Copper 9 and construct spires around. And 5. That she's interested in the cabin fever labs. Let's quickly cover these last 2 points. Since Copper 9 has no biological life, the only possible life forms on this planet are the only ones created by the absolute solver. Meanwhile, I assume the spires are similar to the Tower of Corpses we saw back at episode 1, which double as safe spaces for spaceships to land, like we saw in episode 3, when Tessa parked close nearby. As per why Sin is interested in the cabin fever labs, well, the show itself answers this for us.
I'm here to find which drones were infected. When we get to the labs and find that list.
Remember what I said about a possible cure for the absolute solver? That might also be there too. So, do you remember the timeline I created in my first video? Let's try to update it with the information we now have about this little Cynnamon roll. As it is obvious now, the absolute solver took control of Sin and some other worker drones around the Elliott mansion, causing a black hole to appear nearby. However, this black hole isn't the one that causes Earth to disappear, as there's still a photo of the wreckage here. It's likely that this was the absolute solver's first display of power, and when taking more drones to control, then Earth was properly destroyed. Yes, destroyed. Not teleported. Earth is not Copper 9. Whoever dared to hypothesize that is probably delusional. I'm looking at you with certain shame. Since Sin is a boss in JC Jenson now, she likely resisted the control of the absolute solver at some point, breaking free from possession. This is just my guess, but I believe Sin is in charge of what we might call the disassembly division of JC Jenson, where Sin upgrades, creates, and properly protects drones in order to fight the absolute solver before it can amass an interstellar army of solver-powered drones. As per her current location, It's hard to tell. It could be that the Absolute Solver is trying to control Cyn again, and so she's fleeing to another planet to destroy. We don't have much to go to, so perhaps that's one of the main open questions of this episode. Heck, it's possible that the next time we see Cyn, it could be as a Disassembly drone too, in order to sport the benefits of Absolute Solver without ever turning again. And before I close this section, I guess we can call V out on her lies.
New body, same horrors. Huh, Cyn? Anything to screw Cyn's plan.
It's clear that V is actually referring to the Absolute Solver, but willfully chooses to name the threat by its first host. However, I don't think she does this intentionally. She may not have the full picture just yet.
It's okay, N. I haven't been honest with V yet.
Alright, that's a wrap. What do you think?
Please tell me there is nothing else you have to talk about.
Now that you remind me, we do need to discuss these reality bending glasses again. Where did she pull them from this time? Her RobOS? Actually, don't answer that. We should do a deep dive into the...
It's 3 in the morning, Lord Drone. Go to bed already.
But I'm not tired.
That wasn't a question. Just finish the video and stop bothering him. You wouldn't want to go to the basement again, would you?
Oh boy, I think we've run out of time. So, where do we go from here? What's going to happen in the next episode? We'll likely take things right where they left off. Tessa will ask Enter this Assembly Z before she turns into a real problem, only for Enter to refuse. They will have a heated discussion until N decides to flee with UZ around the cabin fever labs. Tessa will probably call J for backup, trying to search for N and Yuzi, and it's quite possible that by the end of episode 7, Yuzi turns completely, incapacitating N, and reuniting with a fully possessed doll. But not only that, these two will be reunited with all the cabin fever labs drones that are fully possessed with Absolute Solver, and together, they'll try to destroy Copper 9. It will be up to Tessa, J, N, and possibly V, to stop all of them before this planet suffers the same fate as Earth. I think this idea could be quite interesting to explore, but also, what if we spice things up a little? What if they all fail? By the end of season 1, Tessa dies, and Copper 9 is fully destroyed. Season 2 will pick things up with a clone version of the main trio, exploring a different planet with the same threats. But perhaps, this time, there will be a familiar face ready to join them in their mission. As always, it's just a guess. You never know what this show may throw at you. Alright, that's the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching this behemoth. And hey, stay tuned for more. I don't know when my next upload will be, but surely it will be about something interesting. Be sure to stick around. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a party to attend. See ya.